Now, I've told you some very interesting things are happening here in L.A., where I'm broadcasting from. The L.A. Times was purchased by a billionaire, and the billionaire prevented the L.A. Times from putting out an editorial endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Washington Post did the same thing. And there was another editorial about ready to be printed, trashing Donald Trump's nominees. The owner also quashed that. So now there has been a memo put out by LA Times staffer complaining about their boss. They said, we understand that you have a role in shaping the tone and direction of the editorial board and opinion section, but we are still bound by core values and the ethics of journalism. Really? This is a newspaper, by the way, whose columnists referred to me as the black face of white supremacy. Another columnist said that my views were white supremacist. Just saying. A duty to be transparent and act in service of the public. We believe we have an obligation to report these under ethics policy, which states the primary goal should be to protect our integrity. Now, the owner has gone even further. He's expressed his plan to introduce what he called a bias meter beginning next month that would allow readers to get both sides of the same story. He said in an interview with his own newspaper, the new owner, it's exhausting to turn on Fox and turn on CNN and turn on MSNBC. We need to be that middle-of-the-road, trustworthy source. I think that's our goal. The only way you can survive is to not be an echo chamber of one side. End of quote. Are you kidding me? And by the way, this owner expressed surprise when a former LA Times writer said that only 4% of journalists identify as Republicans. The new owner was shocked. He said, quote, if it's news, it should be the facts, period. And if it's an opinion, that's maybe an opinion of the news. But that's what I now call a voice. And so we want voices from all sides to be heard, and we want the news to be just the facts, end of quote. Wow. And to that end, he's hired Scott Jennings. We're going to play some cuts of Scott Jennings later. Scott Jennings is a Republican who's on CNN, often squared off against 4 or 5 people, which means it's a fair fight. Now, regarding CNN, they put out a report. A woman named Clarissa Ward, foreign correspondent reporter, she's in Syria. And they reported that a prisoner rescued by the United States media, rescued by CNN, was a opposition fighter, languishing in jail, starving in jail. And Clarissa Ward was somehow involved in freeing, and said it was the most interesting part of my career, most stunning thing I've ever done in my career. Now it turns out that he really wasn't a opposition fighter. He was in fact a Bashar al-Assad regime torturer, and and he wasn't a prisoner, and it was just a little embarrassing. She tried to explain it away with Jake Tapper, number 20.
Now, after that piece aired, Clarissa and her team began learning more about this man, and they discovered that he had falsely identified who he was and his past. Clarissa Ward has kept up with the story and is here with the update. Clarissa, what do we know about this man now?
Well, Jake, obviously from the minute we witnessed this astonishing moment, we were trying to dig up more information on this prisoner. We weren't able to find anything with the name he gave us, Adel Khurbal. But in the days after our report aired, CNN started talking to people in the city of Homs who told us that his real name is, in fact, Salama Mohammed Salama. He is reportedly a lieutenant in the Air Force Intelligence Directorate. He is also known as Abu Hamza. He was known to run Air Force intelligence checkpoints in the city of Homs. He's accused of extorting and harassing people. And we have now been able to corroborate the information those residents gave us with a photograph of Salama. And it's clear that far from being an ordinary guy, as he presented himself to be, he was a part of Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime, who somehow found himself in prison. We don't know why he was arrested. The fact-checking website Verify SY has said that he was held in the prison where we found him for 1 month because of some kind of a disagreement over profit sharing of extorted funds with a higher-ranking officer. That lines up with what we've been told, but CNN cannot confirm that. We are continuing to dig, obviously, and as of this moment, we have not been able to contact Salama himself.
And this moment certainly captures the complexity of the situation in Syria.
Absolutely.
It's complex.
I mean, listen, Jake.
Hey, you know.
It certainly captures the complexity with regards to Syria's prisons and detention centers. This regime collapsed with lightning speed. Thousands of prisoners were released. And the reality is that we know almost nothing about who was held, on what charges, where all these detainees have gone now. And when the guard, who was one of the rebels, when he opens that cell door, you can see the shock on his face. He literally said to the man, "I had no idea you were in there for all these days." And, you know, Assad used these prisons as a weapon to hold on to power and this industrial scale detention of his opponents. But this clearly shows it wasn't just opponents who were incarcerated, and it wasn't only opponents who fell afoul.
Okay, that's enough. In short, she blew it. She called it one of the most extraordinary moments of her career that this guy released. And turns out he was notorious for his torture. And after the release of the report, people on social media began questioning the coverage. If he's been locked up in prison for all this time, how come he has perfectly manicured nails, clean clothes, a well-groomed look, and didn't seem emaciated? How did that happen? And then CNN began backtracking and blamed it on the complexities of the situation. You know, it's a tough thing covering Syria and getting it right. Now, Stephanie Rule of MSNBC Hee Haw was talking about how easy it was to get access to Donald Trump versus how difficult it is to get access to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And she mentioned that as one of the reasons, perhaps, that Donald Trump appeared to be far more accessible and far more relatable to people, one of the reasons why Donald Trump actually won the election. She buried the lead. She called Donald Trump, had his number. He answered. And she talked about how accessible that meant. That's not why he answered. He answered to tell her to go blank herself, which is what he did at the end of their call when he hung up on her. I'll have that for you when I got back. Thanks for watching these clips from The Larry Elder Show. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment. More thought-provoking discussions are just a click away, so stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.